live on the set. Welcome to the Bayou, a place where legends are born and many have witnessed them. From Coach Dale to Shaq, Joe and Jaden to Eddie Kennison. You come to Death Valley or P-Mac, expect that voodoo. Top speed like it's 4-2, where nobody's catching Bluetooth. Represent the Chuck and WM no matter what. From Gosport to a legend, that's what's up.
Welcome to another edition of Go-To Legends. I'm pretty excited about my guest today. But before we get into our guest, let me be the first to tell you, if no one has told you today, I love you with the love of Christ. There's absolutely nothing that you can do about it, and be a light that shines so bright today that it has the impact to save someone's life. Wow, man, I'm pretty excited because my guest today, and he would probably say it as well, our interior linemen very rarely get an opportunity to tell their story, or they don't get a whole lot of love. But we all know that without our big guys, it's impossible for the quarterback to do his job. It's impossible for the receivers to do their job. And without our big guys up front, football would not be football. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, Mr. Mark King. Mark, thanks for being here, brother.
Man, I'm going to tell you, Eddie, definitely an honor, privilege, and humbled to be here today. I appreciate you asking me to come on.
Yeah, man. And, like I said, it's very rare that a lot of you guys get a lot of love. But for me as a wide receiver, I've always gotten along with our interior linemen. I used to go, like when I played in the league, I used to go and have fun with our big guys. You guys are as big as y'all are. Y'all have like the softest heart, and you have the softest monotone, the softest approach to everything. You're big teddy bears. You probably heard that a whole lot, right? But I'll give a little bit about who Mark King is. I like reading bios and I like reading stats and all of that fun stuff. So Mark was born in and raised in Houma, Louisiana. You played at Houma Junior High School, and then you went on to Terrebonne High School. You were a 3-sport athlete. Can you imagine an interior lineman, an offensive lineman playing 3 sports? I can. I can see it and hear it. Your junior year at Terrebonne High School is when recruiting really kicked off for you. You were first recruited by a non-LSU school, but SEC school. It was Auburn, correct? You were all district and all regionals. You had those honors. You had an outstanding senior year. You were co-captain of the football team, all district, all regional, and all state honors. You were voted to Louisiana's Dirty Dozen. Now, I'm going to ask you about that because I've never heard of the Dirty Dozen. It has to be an offense or defensive line, but in particular, offensive lineman. You were in the top 12 recruits in the state of Louisiana. You played and served as co-captain in the Louisiana High School All-Star game. You were inducted into the Terrebonne High School Athletic Hall of Fame in 2009. You finished school in 1991, came here to our beautiful LSU, and we'll get into that story here in a bit. 4-year letterman here at LSU, played under Curly, who also recruited me as well. Yep. So we played around the same time. Man, you played for 4 different coaches in 5 years. That had to be tough. So we'll dive into that. We were a part of the 1995 Bringing Back the Magic season, which we ultimately won the Independence Bowl in the 1995 season. And I'll stop there because we're going to dive into some other things. Yeah. Mark, again, brother, I appreciate you being here. But let's start your career at the very beginning. I started when I was 7 years old, playing football, running around the neighborhood. When did sports or football really when did you fall in love with the game of football, with sports in general?
Yeah, so for me, I don't ever remember football not being right at the front of my life. I mean, you know, growing up as a kid, always had that aspiration of playing college football, playing at the next level. So, man, I think I played my first organized game of football when I was 10.
Okay.
One of my claim to fames, I don't know if you know this, but I was a first rounder as well. But this goes all the way back to the Demons, which was Bantam League football in Terrebonne Parish. They had the Hark League, they had the TPR League, and I played for the Hark League, and it was probably, I guess, about 83-ish, 84-ish. What they would do is all the incoming kids to Hark that year would, we'd all pile up in the West Side gym, and they literally had a first pick of that year. So each team had their place in order, just like any draft, on when they were going to be picking. And so all the kids were lined up. A bunch of 10-year-olds are all lined up in the Hark gym. And I was the first pick that year of the Demons. And we went on to 3 city championships. And so that's my claim to fame as far as being a first-round draft
A first-round pick, brother. Yeah. So you're the first-round pick, in the Terrebonne Parish, right? You guys going to win 3, we're going to say Super Bowls, right, in Terrebonne Parish. So you get through that phase of football in your life. You get through junior high. You get to Terrebonne High School, and you have a phenomenal junior and senior year at Terrebonne High School. Then recruiting starts to happen. Take us through your phase of recruiting and how you ultimately came to the decision that LSU was going to be the school that you were going to attend, or bring your talents to, I should say.
So first and foremost for me, man, by the grace of God, man, I always had good coaching. At the Demons, I had really good coaching with Mark LaRose. If you go to Homer Junior High, Kelly Pugh ended up being my coach in 8th and 9th grade. Coach Pugh had played for a state championship at Terrebonne High as a coach, and then he was the junior high coach when I was there. And I was a 3-sport athlete leading all the way through my freshman year at Homer Junior High. And my freshman year is kind of when things started to turn like, man, this could actually be something. And I remember the turning point for me, Coach Pugh and I, the week leading up to our last game of the year, we were walking through the breezeway to the practice field. And this was a pivotal moment for me. But Coach Pugh had, was talking to me, and that year I had played guard, center, and tackle, and played them all pretty effectively. And he called everybody Hoss, and we walking through the breezeway that day, and he said, "Hey, Hoss," he said, "look," he said, "man, if you keep doing the right things and going on the path you're going," he said, "there's no reason, Mark, that you shouldn't be an all-state player by your senior year in high school." And when he said that, Eddie, that's when it kicked it in for me. The fact that Coach Pugh had said that and had that confidence in me, that's really when I went into overdrive football-wise. I dropped the other 2 sports that I was in, ended up regretting that, but dropped those other 2 sports and strictly focused in on football from that point on. And it ended off paying dividends in the long run. And so, I went through my sophomore year at Terrebonne High on an 0-10 team.
No, that was tough.
Fast track to the spring of that year, we made a coaching change. We brought in a guy by the name of Pat Key, who ended up being my mentor as a coach, and as a player. I ended up having the fortune of coaching with Coach Key as well. But he came in on that junior year, and that's when things started to, take off for me a little bit. I hadn't really been recruited. I was on a hunting trip in Alabama. Odd story about me making that link with Auburn. So my dad, we were hunting in Auburn. He had some customers with him, and on one particular day, I ended up staying in the stand real late. So when I arrived back at the lodge, it was later. It was later in the morning, 10, 11 o'clock. And I was coming up the road by myself, just walking. I'm a 6'3", 6'4" guy, 275 pounds. gun on my back, and it just so happened that for some reason that morning, one of the assistant ADs for Auburn was at the same lodge we were at.
Just so happened to be there.
And I remember my dad said the guy saw me coming down the pathway. He's like, man, who's that cat? My dad said, hey, that's my son Mark. And he said, he's got to be a football player. Like, yes, sir. He plays for Terrebonne High, offensive lineman, this, that, and other. So I got back to the lodge and, shot the bull with the guy for a little while. And he said, man, he said, would you be interested in coming by Auburn the next morning? He said, I'd like to take you walk around, and just show you around campus. So sure enough, came out to stand early the next day and got to Auburn's campus. As I'm walking up on the campus, I mean, he didn't see me, but I saw Big Bo walking off of campus.
And that's Bo Davis?
The running back.
Bo Jackson.
Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
So, man, I'm seeing Bo Jackson walk out of the building and I'm walking in, and, man, I'm just in awe. And sure enough, he's walking to me around the coach's office. Next thing you know, I end up in Coach Pat Dye's office. Coach Pat is sitting there talking with me, this, that, and the other. He said, man, when you get back home, send us some film, all that kind of good stuff. So I got back to Houma after that after that hunting trip, sent Auburn a tape, and sure enough, a few months later, I ended up at their spring game. And really, that's when the recruiting trail kicked off for me. So really from that point on is when things really hit full stride. LSU came into the mix, A&M came into the mix, a few other schools. But that's how it kind of all got started for me.
Yeah.
Like I said, had a pretty good junior year, but had a really, really good senior year. And ended up paying dividends for me.
Awesome. And when you had to send tape in, was it the big VHS tape that you had to send in?
I'm sure we sent both VHS and beta. That's before digital really kicked in.
Did you charge Auburn because they didn't rewind your tape and send it back to you? You didn't charge them double, did you?
No, we didn't. So that's how it kind of kicked off for me, man. And like I said, I really don't remember a time in my life where football was not right at the front of everything. And for me, kept me on the right path, ended up getting me into a position to where, I could be here at LSU and reap all the benefits of being a player here during that time period and really after. I mean, a lot of the successes in my life are indirect association with my time here at LSU.
Yeah, man. And so Auburn, obviously you didn't go to Auburn, so Curley recruited you, and obviously you came here for an official visit at some point during that time. Tell us about that recruiting period with LSU and why and how you decided to be an LSU Tiger.
So Mike Archer was the head coach my senior year, so he started recruiting me, offered me. I didn't accept anything during my senior season, but he was the coach during my senior season. Well, at some point that year, he got fired, right?
That's
so
right.
Him and all of his staff, Coach Daig and Kenny Farrow and all those guys I was very familiar with, they were gone. Just so happened, Southern Miss was recruiting me really hard. That's where Coach Hallman was at Southern Miss. So when they were courting who the next head coach was going to be at LSU, man, like I didn't know who it was going to be. I think at Spurrier, they were talking with Spurrier. Spurrier had never talked to me. It ended up being Coach Hallman, so we ended up keeping the offer in place. But Eddie, I didn't grow up an LSU fan. Believe it or not, man, I was a hardcore Notre Dame guy.
Yeah.
Like, man, that was my love. Jeff Thom, Chris Zorich, Tony Rice, just that whole era of players. I was a big Notre Dame guy. And my first night in Tiger Stadium to watch a game was LSU A&M, the fall of '90. And the way that game went, I was sitting up in the players section, kind of in awe and what's going on in my first experience at all this kind of good stuff. And, I've always been a religious guy. I was president of our FCA, so, I'm born and raised Southern Baptist and, been always faith-based. And I remember sitting in the stands, and I can't remember, I think it was right before a punt. the punt was going to Todd Kinchin. I remember sitting there and saying, man, God, if this is the place for me, give me a sign. And literally 10 seconds later, the ball is punted. Todd Kinchin catches it, and then he has just this amazing run for a touchdown. And I kind of went, okay, maybe that's my sign. But anyway, nonetheless, went on the rest of that season at Terrebonne High. Had some recruiting visits set up. I had 5 visits set up. My first one was the LSU. Kevin Mawai was my player rep. He took me out on my recruiting visit. On the Friday night, we ended up in the Tiger Bar. Of course, the drinking age was 18 back then. And I remember we were in there, and we had a really good night in the Tiger. Stanley Roberts, Shaquille O'Neal, they all ended up in the bar that night, bought some drinks, this, that, and other. So, man, I had a real heavy Friday night, paid for it that Saturday morning. I remember sitting in some type of breakfast. Joe Dean was talking to all the players and the recruits at the time, and, man, I'm just praying, please let me make it through this breakfast without, just losing everything right here on the floor. So I got through that day. We had a much lower key Saturday night. And then I remember on that Sunday morning, LSU officially made the offer. I didn't do anything at that point, but I remember getting back home that afternoon, and I was like, man, I can't do another 4 weeks of this, no matter where it's at. So I said, you know what, man, everybody else to the wayside. I gave them a call, and I said, hey, if you guys will have me, I'm definitely in. So I committed.
Wow.
A day or two after my official visit to LSU.
I wonder if, and we'll talk about Michelle at some point, but I wonder if your wife, Michelle, ever heard that story about that, your recruiting visit to LSU.
Yeah, I think she probably has, times were much different back then. One other funny part of that weekend, it was in the Tiger, and I remember there was a cheerleader by the name of Stephanie Rutherford, I think her name was.
Be careful, Mark. Michelle, she's here in the studio.
We weren't dating at the time. So, Stephanie was a cheerleader at LSU at the time.
Yeah.
Well, man, I remember dancing with her. She showed me a lot of attention, this, that, and the other. I'm like, man, yeah, great. And I remember fast forward all the way to my freshman year, the first time we get to go out as freshmen during fall camp.
Right.
Man, we end up in sports. I see Stephanie. I'm like, okay, yeah, she was all about me on my recruiting visit. So I go up to Stephanie. I'm like, hey, Stephanie, Mark King, good to see you. And she just kind of looked at me like, who? And I was like, oh, I see what was going on here.
The old hook.
Yeah,
she
hook, line, and sinker.
That's it, man.
So, man, I just put my tail between my legs and walked off. But yeah.
That's awesome, brother. So you got to LSU. You played. You were redshirted your freshman year.
Yeah.
So you got 3 really good years in at LSU. Or did you play 4 years at LSU?
So I was redshirted in the fall of '91.
Right.
I mean, I was nowhere near ready to play. I was backing up a guy by the name of, at the time, Darren Landry, who was a phenomenal left guard for here at LSU. So I was redshirted my true freshman year, which definitely I wasn't ready to play. Fast forward to my redshirt freshman year, my second year on the team, I backed up Darren. And the way we did things back then, at least on the offensive line, I averaged about 15 plays a game.
Mm-hmm.
They would actually send me in with the ones and to allow me to gain some experience. So I was playing about 15 plays a game as a redshirt freshman, playing some special teams. They actually had me on kickoff return and then PAT field goal. So I got some reps and some times that second year on the program. And in my third year as a sophomore, I was able to earn a starting role and ended up, starting sophomore, junior, and senior year here. Me personally, I think my junior year was really my better year overall as far as consistency goes. So, yeah, 4-year letterman, 3-year starter. We had a really phenomenal year in '95. I can remember when Hallman and really when Archer were recruiting me, they knew my past with Terrebonne.
Right.
My Terrebonne years were 0-10, 5-5, like 8-3, right? And so I remember them saying, hey, we want you to be, Coach Hallman, we want you to be part of rebuilding this program. So, I kind of took that as a personal challenge when we came in. Like, yeah, man, we're going to be part of the rebuilding years. I was hoping we'd, gain some success a little bit sooner in my career here at LSU. But, there was a change that was made in the spring of '95 with bringing Coach D in.
That's right.
Coach Donardo was always good to me. And, one thing I'm very proud of is in that senior year, with you and I being right at the forefront of it, we were able to get the tide turned. And '95 was a special year.
Yeah.
I don't know if the youngins nowadays actually realize what the state of the union was back then. But for us to do what we did in '95, I'm kind of biased, but that was a big deal back then. Folks might look at, oh, well, man, they just went to the Independence Bowl. It was a much different time back then as far as the whole bowl scene goes.
Because LSU hadn't won a bowl game since
7 years.
Yes,
Yeah.
7 years, and it was time.
So I don't know if you remember, but we had options in different bowls to play in. I think there was 3 different options on bowls we could have, made bids for, and we ended up going with the Independence Bowl in Shreveport. And I'm gonna tell you, at that time, it actually was the perfect time and place for us to be that
That's
year.
right.
I mean, I don't know if you remember that night in Shreveport, bitterly cold, but I mean, just a packed house. They had to bring in extra bleachers to that stadium. So, would we have loved to have been in the Rose Bowl or something at that time? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But for that time and period, and that actually was a good place for us to be.
Oh, I agree. I mean, you think about it, that was like a home game for us. Michigan State had to come way from wherever Michigan State is, but that was perfect for us, and we absolutely needed that. And maybe this is a story, that particular story, that the young people, they really don't know about, because that really was a magical season for us and for LSU. Because since then, I think we may have missed 1, maybe 2 bowl game seasons. Yeah, so I mean, that was really bringing back the magic.
And '95 was similar to where we were at in '93. In '93, we went into the Arkansas game, and had we won that game, we were going to a bowl. I think it was going to be the Hawaii Bowl. Man, and we fell short that game. I think there was 3 backs that rushed for over 100 yards that night. We decided to slow play the option, which still to this day, I don't know why we did that. But I remember falling short in '93 when we had an opportunity to go to a bowl game. And I remember that in '95 going into Arkansas with having to win that game to get a bowl bid. And I remember even being interviewed by, one of the local, might have been Jacques Doucet. Shout out Jacques.
Yeah, there you go, JD.
It might have been an interview with him, but I remember in that interview talking preceding that game about, and we're in the exact same situation we were in '93. We just got to get it done. And I think we ended up 7-3, 7-3-1 our senior year, something like that.
Right.
We ended up tying South Carolina. But, man, we were so close, Eddie.
Yeah.
We were so close to being a 9-win ball club. We should have beat Alabama. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. But we should have beat Alabama in that game in '95. So we were very, very close to being really, really good.
Yeah.
But, man, we finally figured out a winning formula, and we were able to get it done.
I think we were really good because we helped pave the site of what LSU football and LSU athletics could and should be. I don't know at that point in time how many, whether it was baseball, whether it was football, men and women's basketball, but I don't know. I know track and field, they were winning championships, but I think that was the only sport. And that kind of sparked who we are as LSU even to this day, with our football team, men and women's basketball, our baseball team, our track and field, our women's softball and volleyball. I mean, it really set the standard for all of our sports and LSU athletics today.
Yep.
So after the bowl game, well, I'll back up even before then, because I think you may have a short story to tell about meeting your beautiful wife at some point at your time here at LSU, because you told me a story right before we came on the air that after the bowl game that you guys got married shortly, a week after the bowl game. So bring me back to the time, and I know you remember because you're pretty intelligent. You have a beautiful brain, brother. The time you met your wife, Michelle, and take us through the time of getting married to her and how she actually changed the course of who you are as a man, and now that you guys have 2 kids.
Yeah, no, great. So Michelle and I, man, it probably would have been 86-ish. So we ended up being in the same homeroom beginning in 8th grade, right? So we both were at Homer Junior High together. So I met her in the 8th grade.
Oh, wow.
We never officially courted until probably my freshman year here at LSU, but I've been knowing her that long. I can remember, as an 8th grader, I mean, knew who she was, but she definitely, at least back then, wasn't on my radar. But man, fast forward a year later, and I'm kind of showing my ability to recall past events. The very first time I kind of noticed her, there was like a fall dance or something at Homer Junior High, and man, the place to go after, and I'm looking at her over there.
Yeah.
The place to go after the dance was Mr. Gaddy's in Homer, Louisiana.
Come on, brother, get you some brownie points.
That was the hopping spot. So I remember her being in Mr. Gaddy's after the dance. And she had a particular dress on, and it was, kind of cut in a certain way. And I was like, interesting, man.
Yeah.
I kind of noticed her then. And then we would fast forward through high school. We went to a couple dances together, things of that nature. But never really officially dated until probably the spring of my freshman year here at LSU.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we ended up getting engaged. We played the Independence Bowl late December of 95, and on January 5th, 96, we got married. So right after the bowl game, we got married, ended up going off to Jamaica, doing our honeymoon in Jamaica, flew back in, and I remember going to you, but we flew back into New Orleans, and as I'm walking through baggage claim, up on the screen was your picture and a posting like on ESPN, like you had declared that you were going for the NFL draft, and kind of being caught off guard on that, but obviously paid dividends for you being a first round draft selection to the Rams. So
it was pretty cool, brother, and it's great because I'd never heard that story, and for you to be able to remember that coming back from a honeymoon and seeing that, and so man, that's pretty. But
awesome. Michelle for me has been. I don't quite know where I'd be if I'd have made a different decision. She keeps me straight. She keeps me in line. She's a good partner. We're actually an empty nester now. We've got a 26-year-old and a 20-year-old or 19. Yeah. So our girls are out doing their own things. We got a sophomore here at LSU. So. We're enjoying the empty nest life.
Oh, brother,
it's been good.
I know it's fun. After marriage, you go on and you begin a coaching career.
Yeah.
At Terrebonne High School. Tell me about your experience in your coaching career at Terrebonne.
So, man, ultimately, at the end of the day, when I was done playing here at LSU, that first spring, that I was finishing graduating. I mean, my ultimate goal was to try to make it to the next level. That ended up not panning out, and so. When that didn't pan out, I really wasn't ready to be done with football. That's really all I knew. So I ran across a really good opportunity to go back to my alma mater, coach at Terrebonne High School.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that had coached me were still there. So for me, it was now an opportunity to coach with the guys that mentored me as a player. So I started my coaching career in '96 at Terrebonne High.
Right.
My first assignment as a coach at Terrebonne High, and you know enough about football to know what this assignment means. Excuse me. So I had tight ends, and I was head of the equipment managers. And the further I got in my coaching career, I was like, oh, I got that assignment because that's where you start off the peons, right?
That's right.
So I started my coaching career in '96, and man, my mentor as a coach is a guy by the name of Pat Key. He was my head coach in high school. Then I coached under Coach Pat Key, and then it would come full circle to where Coach Key coached under me. So I spent 6 years at Terrebonne High, some of the best years of my life. Coached a combination of tight ends, then defensive line, and then my last 3 years, coached the O-line, coordinated some offense and special teams as well. And then in 2002, I made a decision to move over to Vanderbilt Catholic. Moved over to Vanderbilt Catholic, and at both schools, I was track and football.
Sure.
So I spent 02 to 08 at Vanderbilt Catholic. Again, great place for me to be. And then, man, right at the height of my, I guess you would call coaching career, at least high school wise, man, I decided, man, it's time for me to move on. So coming off the best season of my coaching career, I think we were 13-1, quarterfinals, this, that, and the other, and then a few months later, I announced that I was leaving, which kind of took a lot of people by shock. So, but for me at the time, it was time for me to move on. So in 08, transitioned out of coaching, had a few options, both in pharmaceutical and oil and gas, and ultimately decided to go the oil and gas route. So I've been in oil and gas ever since 2008, and it's worked out good for me. But no matter what I do or where I am, I truly am a coach at heart. That was coaching and teaching was 11, 12 years. Some of the best times of my life. Didn't make a lot of money during that time period, but man, the experience, the friendships, the kids that I got to work with, man, it's going to be hard to trump that.
Oh, brother, I tell you, I mean, football, that's our life. Yeah. And, that's who we have been and who we will continue to be for the rest of our life. We will always watch it. We will always be a part of. We will always lend who we are and our experience through football with just about any kid that will ask us. I know I get asked all the time on campus while I'm at LSU, how did you get through it? What'd you do? And, the regimen, and did you have a routine, and all of those fun things. So I get asked probably a couple times a day when I'm noticed on campus. So and normally, Mark, I wouldn't bring this up, but I was reading your bio, and you decided to walk away or step away from football. Was it just it was time, or were you dealing with a particular issue? And if this is personal, because I think a lot of our listeners, we'll have people that are listening from all backgrounds and all walks of life, dealing with different issues and things in their life, and you were diagnosed at some point with pulmonary thyroid cancer. Yeah. Walk me through that process.
Yeah, so exiting coaching for me in 08 was just the fact that at the time I think I was 35. I knew I wasn't in it for a 30-year career. Like I knew that was not my end goal. So at the time I was like, man, I'm young enough to be able to offer an industry or a company something long-term now, as opposed to 15 years from now trying to do it then. So just at the time, it was the right time to make the move I did. It was pretty calculated. And man, it's really paid dividends for me because both organizations I've been with, one Moody Price, which is a Baton Rouge-based oil and gas company, and then Danos. Both of those companies are privately owned, family-owned, values-based companies. And so, I was able to transition out of the coaching profession into two good organizations that, has paid off for me. But yeah, man, I made the transition in 08 out of coaching for particular reasons. First couple years out, even though I was with a good organization, man, that was a learning curve for me. And at the time, it was kind of like, man, what do I feel this? What and or how can I fill this competition void? Right? Because it's one thing to compete in oil and gas, but man, it really is not the same competition that you and I are accustomed to. So
you didn't go try to jump out of airplanes anymore.
No. So what I found in '09, I found triathlon in '09. So, man, I kind of, I kind of found that bug and found that passion, and for about a decade, man, kind of operated in the triathlon world, which, provided a lot of solace to me, a lot of competition for me. It just helped me make that transition out, provided a great friend base and just a contact base within that world. So, man, we, on the side as a hobby, spent some time in the triathlon world, which provided a lot of benefit for me. And then to your point on the papillary thyroid cancer, man, in 18 was diagnosed, just kind of random, out of the blue, no really precursors, but was diagnosed with that in 2018. And, I'm still in a situation where we're trying to get fully free of that.
Sure.
In 18, I had a successful surgery, recovery, then treatment, and then went about 2 years with no evidence of nothing, and then had a reoccurrence, ended up back in surgery again, I think in 2020. And then, probably got to about a 2-year mark again to where we thought everything was clear and free. And then, recently within the last year, some stuff showed back up. So, we still trying to, get to that point to where we can say, hey, we're clear and free. We're not quite there yet. I got another checkup at MD Anderson on March 4th. So, man, it's just been an ebb and flow with that. But, I've gotten to where now, man, I really don't get too high or low with that anymore.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I got a good team in place. I got a great care support through Michelle. She's been my saving grace through all of that. We got a plan.
Yeah,
we still not where we want to be, but we'll eventually get there.
Yeah, man. Well, definitely, now that I know more of it, and even when I saw you during this course of the year, for the first time in I don't know how many years, but brother, prayers will definitely be coming from the Kennison camp and from everyone that I've fallen in contact with who are prayer warriors, man. So for you and your family, we will make sure that you guys are on the prayer list for sure.
Definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, brother. And Mark, I appreciate you, brother, so much coming on and just kind of sharing who you are and with your story and your wife and the things that are happening in your life. All of our listeners and fans that will be tuning in, are you on social media? And if you are, how can our listeners go and follow Mark King in your journey with you and Michelle and the kids? How can they go follow you?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, I think Instagram, LinkedIn. My handle on any of those, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure you can find
Probably
me.
somewhere, Mark King, somewhere, right? You're a pretty straightforward guy, Mark. So just, type in Mark King Baton Rouge or something. It'll pull up. So don't be surprised when you get 400 or 500 more people just following you just to see who Mark King is and dive into the mind and the body of a ex-O lineman and now a fantastic man of God, a fantastic husband, a fantastic father, and a guy who's just living life to his fullest, man. So again, Mark, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for driving in and, spending some time with us this morning. And I'll end with this, the way I started. If no one has told you today, and I'm pretty sure Michelle and your girls have told you, but if they haven't, let me be the first to say, I love you, brother, with the love of Christ. There's absolutely nothing that you can do about it, and be a light that shines so bright today that it has the impact to save someone's life. Until next time, we'll see you. Peace and love. Go To Legends fans, we ask that you subscribe, like, share, tell everybody who's an LSU fan, your uncle, your mom, your dad, your cousin, sister, everybody. Share this with them, have them do the same, and I promise you, y'all won't regret being a part of the Go To Legends podcast.
The struggle, the hustle, the blood, the sweat, the tears from the L's you took, don't forget. Survival of the fittest, the cheers, the rings and bucks, now legendary status, that's what's up. The struggle, the hustle, the blood, the sweat, the tears from the L's you took, don't forget. Survival of the fittest, the cheers, the rings and bucks, now legendary status, That's what's up.